Well, welcome to UpTiick. My guest on the show today is Mike Byam, an entrepreneur, corporate leader, angel investor, and occasional weekend wake surfing warrior. His day job is CEO of Terryberry, the industry-leading employee rewards and recognition company with 30 locations and 44,000, I think it's 44,010 today, 44,000 clients worldwide and over 100 years of history. And when he's not leading his mega family business, he's a mentor and board member, an investor in startups from sports leagues and teams to beverage technology. And that includes being a founding investor in TiiCKER. So welcome, Mike.
Oh, thanks, Jeff. It is exciting to be here, and congratulations on everything that's happened with TiiCKER, and this podcast is a real neat step forward for you guys.
Thank you, I really appreciate that. So Terryberry, you got it on your shirt. What is a Terryberry?
Well, that's a great question, and depends how you want to, unpeel that onion, but at our core, we're an employee recognition company. And what does that mean? That means we help organizations foster their values in their people. How do you connect your people with your organization's mission and your organization's values? And recognition is an exceptional tool to achieve that.
So what's the psychology behind that? You talk about purpose-led organizations and how you use rewards and incentives to keep and attract your people. Talk to me about maybe the psychology. You've been doing this for a while.
Sure.
Talk to me about the psychology of that.
Well, I mean, at its core, people like to be recognized. People like to be appreciated. And, if you're deep in the psychology, you could pull out Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and our esteem needs to belong and to be appreciated that's just human nature. So from a psychological standpoint, are you using recognition as a tool to connect with your employees, to connect them with your brand, to connect them with each other, and create ultimately a culture that helps the business succeed? So there's a lot of psychology behind it, but it's foundational too, right? It's fundamental.
Right. So is it also like a Pavlov's dog kind of thing, where you continue to you reward and then people want it again and again, and it actually creates motivation for them?
Well, certainly there are elements of that. I think a lot of our programs and platforms look to engage the broader organization. Today's employees want frequent recognition. They want frequent feedback about their contributions to the organization. If you can help employees at all levels identify your organizational values in action, to celebrate it in others, and then to share that broadly across the business, it has a real ripple effect.
By the way, I'm pretty impressed with us dropping Maslow and Pavlov, and I think that's about as deep as I could go with this.
I can't swim much deeper, no.
No, that's about it. That's about it. So give me some of the backstory of Terryberry. So family business. I assume you've not been there 100 years. So tell me the Terryberry story.
Sure. Well, we've always been based in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and we were started by my great-grandfather in Grand Rapids in 1918. So more than 100 years. The business has continued to evolve. Recognition wasn't as profound a management tool in that time as it is today, but basically we got into the recognition space through the evolution of being a jewelry producer, of manufacturing jewelry. There was we were making class rings and different pins and so forth for businesses, and that led to service award pins and beyond that into a lot of more tangible programs. Today's programs, very different than that, though still having a lot of the same elements. Today it's software, it's a platform where employees can interact with on a daily basis. There are oftentimes still tangible awards that are presented, that are driven through that platform. There are tangible awards that people can bank points and redeem for, but ultimately you're creating this hub of recognition activity that ultimately is, like I said, it's fostering and foundational to sharing your values.
So you talked about rings. Any championship rings or school rings, that of a notable character or personality? Any that come to mind?
Oh, we've done some neat ones over the years. I think there was
Signed confidentiality agreements.
I don't want to break any of those, but I can tell you in the championship ring side of things, you can't make a championship ring big enough for today's athlete, whether it's a women's volleyball team or a middle school football team. They're looking for big bling, and so there's always a process that's part of saying, really, do you want it that big? Could you see yourself wearing that? And most people say, well, no, but I'd like it on my shelf, looking good.
And then when you run those championship rings, do you pull one aside for yourself, for your collection?
Well, we've got a neat sample case. I can tell you that, yeah, for sure. We made a ring a couple years ago for, it was I think it was the 1999, or maybe it was 2000, University of Michigan football team that had won the Orange Bowl, okay? And though they won the Orange Bowl for one reason or another at that point, the administration never decided to get a ring made. And so, I think they were having an alumni event at halftime. They were bringing back that team, and you look at the names on that roster, and it's, they're Hall of Famers. There are names that most football fans would recognize, including Tom Brady. So that was kind of fun to get a ring that was presented to him at Michigan Stadium in front of 110,000 people.
I think you just say, I made championship rings for Tom Brady, and just stop there, right? It's
yeah, like, I could have boiled that down a little.
I don't need any more context than that.
I definitely could have shortcut that a little bit.
So I recall a story, not a well-traveled story, but when you did a renovation of your facility and literally finding or striking gold. So talk to me about that.
Well, sure. So when you're a company with a lot of history, things happen over time, but they add up, right? And so Terryberry produced, it would be in the early 80s, we were in process of moving from one facility to another, and the area that the office that we were leaving, the production facility that we were leaving, was getting knocked down. And one thing that they decided to do was to refine the floorboards, because there'd been so much gold in the air through the manufacturing process. And going through that, you're ripping out the floorboards, and you're burning it and refining it and going through that whole process. Well, they found enough gold in the floorboards that had accumulated from 1918 to 1980, whatever, to make hundreds of rings. So that was our cost of goods went down that year. Yeah, for sure.
In their mining, you're old school.
A little bit.
That's awesome. So kind of back to some of the perks and incentives, and obviously, on the TiiCKER platform, that's really what we're about.
Right.
Is that rewards of ownership, just as employees get rewards for their performance. But talk to me about some of your maybe most popular, but also maybe most obscure rewards or perks that you've ever done.
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's so broad, right? I mentioned the 360 recognition platform being sort of the most popular tool that people are using today to engage employees, and oftentimes there are tangible awards that are part of that. Sometimes it's very high value, high perceived value items that are presented as part of that from a reward standpoint. Maybe it's a TiiCKER watch, or maybe it's a championship ring for reaching the President's Club, or something within business that's celebrated. Certainly, there are people that invest significant amount of money to send the message of what this achievement represents. So that's a big part of it. The flip side of it that we would point to is, you're also really able to instill value in just about anything. Sometimes the written word's real valuable. Small certificates can be impactful. there's a legendary story in the recognition industry about Hewlett-Packard's golden banana. And so you say, well, what's the golden banana? And it was an institutionalized award there that started when an HP engineer went into his boss's office and says, hey, I solved this problem that's we've been working on for a long time. And managers, certainly verbally appreciated that and felt like he had to do something to present something to him at the time. So he reached into his brown paper bag lunch, pulled out a banana and said, congratulations, and handed it to him. And so, that became a symbolic within that organization. You've probably seen different things like that at different companies, something that has an appropriate impact on where you've instilled institutional value. So
yeah, another organization I'm involved in, we give a Cat in the Hat, and it's this kind of creativity and going above and beyond award. But it can be anything, right? If it has symbolism and gets carried forward. So let's do a little flip turn in honor of the Olympics a few weeks ago. But flip turn to TiiCKER. So you're an investor in TiiCKER, which we appreciate. What was it? What drew you to TiiCKER besides my good looks and charisma?
It was mostly that, but no. Gosh, when you're investing in something, especially in an organization that's early in its lifespan, one of the things I personally am looking for is a group that is actively addressing a neglected market. And that's something that I see in TiiCKER is, or publicly traded companies don't have a way to connect with individual investors. And as I'm probably not telling you anything, but if you can create brand advocates with this investor group, it can be so powerful. And so many companies, and we see it, right? They're thinking about, how do I take care of my employees? How do I take care of my customers? Very important, not diminishing that, but there's this other segment out there that if you can connect with on a deeper, who've actually invested in you, who are going to help the organization succeed, be a brand advocate for your business out in the world on an everyday basis. And that's pretty powerful.
Yeah, for sure. And that's the interesting thing about this is you said it's not being addressed. There are companies, and many of your 44,000 clients are in this space where they have employee perks or rewards or a discount store. And we created the Shareholder Store, that same idea. It just wasn't available. Your owners weren't getting what even the employees get, and so it just wasn't a mechanism that worked. And so, by the way, I'm going to need a few of those 44,000 public companies to go ahead and send me those names. That'd be awesome.
Sure. Well, for sure, we can get you. We can't get you those, but what we can do, I think what's important to think about. You think of, well, why do I fly Delta Airlines so often? Well, they've got a customer loyalty frequent flyer program that makes it really advantageous for me to fly Delta Airlines. And we all have those customer loyalties, and those programs work. They engage, and quite frankly, they make people less likely to go elsewhere.
Right.
And so if you can do that with your investor group, that's pretty powerful too.
How is it in first class, by the way?
It's been a while since I've been there, I'll tell you that. Not a lot of flight miles here in the last
I tell you, it's a lot fewer flights, and they're all packed. The planes are packed. So
sure.
Back to travel at least. So that's a good thing. So maybe bring me back to your first stock you ever owned or looked into back in the day, let's say.
Right. So that's my grandfather kind of got me interested in stocks a little bit at a young age. It was something he was passionate about, and that was an element of it for him. Is you want to have companies and brands that you can identify with. So the first one that really spoke to me was Coca-Cola. I was a big fan of Mellow Yellow back in the day.
Nice,
Yeah,
nice.
that was terrific. And I did like the brand awareness of Coca-Cola at that time was huge. So that was big. The next one was Nike, because I had to just do it and so forth. So you can tell I'm a kid of the '80s, right?
Yep.
So those were the first two that I ever personally got involved in.
My very first was McDonnell Douglas. It was, I don't even know what the predecessor, but it was aerospace, and I picked it as part of a junior achievement class. And my grandpa funded it, and I bought it, and I kept it for so long. I bought like one share, but it was that heritage of, wow, I feel like I'm an owner of something. I'm a big deal if I own stock. Well, Coca-Cola has obviously been a pretty good performer. What's in your portfolio today? What's maybe a brand that you love that's in your stock portfolio, like Nike?
Well, what's in the brands that I love most are the ones that perform best, I think.
A capitalist at heart, I love it.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's tough to complain about those, that's for sure. When I think of investing, you think of organizations that are changing things. I think Salesforce is powerful. You see that at work in your own organization. So that is one that comes to mind. Certainly, it's been fun to watch. Some of the things like GameStop and so forth happen. Right. I can't say I was an investor in that. But I've got a pretty diverse portfolio, but not a lot that was instilled in me as a young age are companies like General Electric and Johnson and Johnson and some of those. But you also love to find the ones that are sort of offering or have developed a product. The ones that you explore are the ones that have developed a product that's new and different and a different take on an existing market. So
yeah, I think it's very interesting at the brands that you historically know, a GE and a Coca-Cola and Nike, but they also own a lot of brands underneath them, or there are public companies that you don't know about their brands. We often on TiiCKER we'll talk about like a Thor Industries that you might not know Thor, but you would know their brands like a Jayco or an Airstream. And one of my favorites is, my pick is Lamborghini. You could own a Lambo through Volkswagen stock. So I'm waiting for Volkswagen to add that stock perk so I can get my Lambo finally.
Well, yeah, you and I think at a totally different level, and I applaud that. I mean, the perk that comes to mind for me. So I own. I'm a big burrito guy. It's probably the most perfect food there is.
It's perfect. It is.
So when you get the opportunity, you invest in Chipotle, like you do. And my niece has these really cool flip-flops that I think she got through a promotion through Chipotle, and they're like the slide version, and like on the right flop it says guac, in the left flop it says chips along the top, and like that's what I aspire to.
And that's a perfect example of how that's a promotion that works for a consumer, but she might be an investor in the future, or maybe she doesn't even know that it's a publicly traded company. And conversely, Chipotle, I imagine, has hundreds of thousands of investors who would love to wear some guac sandals.
There, got
some
burrito.
Guac chocks, yeah.
Well, I'm doing everything I can to help their stock.
I appreciate it, yeah.
I've moved a lot of burritos.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
Well, I think that if let's say Chipotle is in your stock portfolio, I assume you'd also say, okay, I'm going to drive past the other options in the world, and I'm going to go to Chipotle. And I think that's consumer behavior, and that gets to a little bit of what we started talking about, is that these perks actually motivate behavior. I guess as you think about that, relating Terryberry in your history of understanding how rewards are so important, do you think the same thing applies to a shareholder?
Undoubtedly, yeah, absolutely. We would say that I used the example of the Golden Banana Award, but ultimately, so much of what we do is incorporating an organization's symbolism into into an award. So when it's presented, not only is it impactful at the time, but on an ongoing basis, it reinforces that connection because you see that symbol. And perks and special experiences and tangible items with the organization symbol on it that you can wear with pride, that deepens a relationship on so many different levels. So yeah, I would undoubtedly that's a deep part of it.
So speaking of connection and brand loyalty and things like that, talk to me about Recognition Man.
Recognition Man, he's everything and more you could ever dream of.
This is the mascot, the Terryberry mascot.
It is the Terryberry mascot. So Recognition Man, well, he's in all of us. There's the little Recognition Man in you, for sure. And we're just working to expose isn't probably the best word, but we're working to share him on a broader basis. And it's been a fun way for our employees to connect with our own brand. It's our Christmas event and Recognition Man's there, or it's a day at the ballpark and Recognition Man shows up and is connecting with our employees' families and their kids, and it helps to deepen that relationship there. So it's a lot of fun too. It took me a long time to convince other members of Team Terryberry that was a good idea, but eventually we got there.
Well, I'm going to need you to get on my side because we definitely need a TiiCKER mascot, and so we're playing with some ideas, but I'm a big fan. So I'm sure you have tried on the Recognition Man mascot uniform and done a few hijinks.
I can't say I have personally, because Recognition Man's in all of us.
Is that also an NDA that you would sign? He's omnipresent.
Yeah, he's there in all of us all the time. This got pretty deep here, didn't it?
Yeah. Well, it's my mascot story. My favorite is my high school was the Wildcats, and so they didn't have a mascot for 20 years, and so I bought a mascot, and my one condition was I got to wear it when we revealed it at the Friday football game. And it was the greatest experience because no one knew it was me, including my kids. And I'm running around doing jumping jacks and going crazy. And it was the most, you want to talk about affirmation? Wear a mascot uniform.
Well, maybe that is part of the recognition program here at TiiCKER.
I think you're right.
Or you could have that experience at, as
you too
an investor. Like they have a day with the Stanley Cup. You could be a day as Ted the TiiCKER or something.
I love it. Maybe it's work in progress. It's a work in progress.
You could bring me in as a consultant, no charge.
No charge. Okay. So speaking of perks, you talked about Chipotle. So free burritos for Chipotle shareholders clearly is your number one stock perk. What would be number 2 or 3 on your list of, boy, I wish there was a perk for me as a shareholder?
Well, so just want to be clear. Burritos are good. Those flip-flops is really what I'm thinking about from Chipotle. But
do you hear that, Chipotle?
I'm always interested in some of the experiences and the way that is there an opportunity for a production tour, a factory tour? And that you mentioned Lamborghini. Are there opportunities to bid on events like driving lessons or something of that nature? I think those can be the behind the scenes type of things, but that make you feel like the owner that you are.
Right.
That is not something that just anyone can go out and buy. Right.
That's my favorite. I'm a sucker for a silent auction, where you bid on those experiences, and it's that feeling like you can't get it anyplace else. But like the Marriott Bonvoys and the Delta Airlines, they've expanded into travel and trips and Academy Awards tickets, and I totally agree that that experience could be some of the most valuable. But again, the biggest issue has been you were a shareholder in Marriott, let's say, or Nike, and they didn't know who you were, and I think that's a really interesting aspect of what TiiCKER does, right? Is it verifies your ownership, so we can say, yeah, Mike owns 100 shares. He's been an owner for a couple years. He's obviously a brand loyalist and enthusiast. He likes our stock. Obviously, he likes the return. but he also is a fan, and so you can reward those fans, and that's really the shareholder as a fan, I think, is a key part of what we're trying to accomplish.
And likely they'll invest more at that point if you deepen that relationship, right?
That's the goal. That's certainly the goal. So let's back up to your role as an investor. So you invest in other startups. You're on boards and mentoring. What is it about? What's kind of your profile? What do you like? What tickles your fancy?
Well, whether it's companies like TiiCKER or another startup I'm involved in called ReadyApp, it's addressing a market that that nobody either knew was there or was just purely neglected. And in something like ReadyApp, I mean, their goal is to bring communication within an organization to the non-desk worker. So many of us who work on computers all the time, and are so accustomed to email, but there are so many businesses out there, whether they're manufacturing or they're in hospitality, where people aren't at a computer, and an email is a terrible way to communicate that. So how can you have efficient communication? So ReadyApp's been a unique investment for me, and it's been fun to see the impact that that's had on businesses. It's interesting, through Terryberry, we saw people trying to connect recognition strategies with employees throughout the business, and some of them it's really easy, others it's a lot more challenging. So that's kind of what led that down the road. You look at, I think there's the total addressable market is a big part of it, at least when I think about things. Beyond that, what are you looking at? You want a strong leadership team that has done this type of thing before, and ultimately something you can be supportive and hopefully contribute to.
So you've been an entrepreneur inside of your business, and you talked about the virtual recognition platform. Was that in response to COVID? Was that something that you had been working on, and it was really kind of the perfect time? Your vision was perfectly timed for the way the world's working?
Sure. Well, like a lot of things from a technology standpoint, COVID accelerated it. What prompted our evolution from a tangible award producer to being a software-led organization really was the generational switch between that was happening in the mid-2000s when certainly Gen Y, the millennials, were becoming a bigger part of the workforce, and the studies came back and said, gosh, these people, this millennial group, they're not going to stay with companies more than a year, maybe 2 years. And if a significant portion of your business is tied to recognizing people for longer years of service, that's pretty concerning. So the good news for us was that all those same studies had indicated that this group was going to make recognition a more important management process. They wanted more recognition. That the millennials wanted more recognition than previous generations, and would be more vocal about it and wanting that feedback. And certainly that's elements of that have played out to some effect. But what we saw the opportunity to do as social media became a communication tool that we relied on as a society was, at its core, recognition is communication. And if we can use the way people are communicating today through social to enhance and amplify recognition, well, then that's even better. And so that's kind of what pushed us down that road with peer-to-peer and social recognition. But to your point, when so many people were displaced and working remotely because of COVID, and so many people that, as everything has changed, that will at least probably not be in the office full time. And so if you've got some employees in some times and others employees in different days, what is that platform to communicate in a positive way about the things that are happening in your organization, and visibly for everyone to see it. So that helped it, for sure.
So speaking of virtual and kind of product development and future, what's coming in your business? Is it going to be NFTs for turning a virtual ring into your new recognition? What's on the product pipeline for what's next for Terryberry?
That's a great question. We haven't gotten to the virtual awards
yet.
The three-dimensional virtual, recognition experience, though that has been talked about. I think what we like to be is the hub of the good things that are happening, and ultimately, how do we use recognition in our platform to foster the attitudes and the behaviors and the contributions that help the organization succeed? And so that can go far beyond traditional recognition. What else are you trying to encourage your employees to embrace? Is it wellness? Is it are there some learning management modules that you have that you're trying to encourage people to get better, to grow, to expand, and completing those, and whether it's in a sort of more of a customer loyalty type of points recognition type of initiative. We feel like we'll continue to integrate with other platforms that human resource people are leveraging on a day-to-day basis, and how they're encouraging their employees, and ultimately having it all flow into our system.
Right. You really leaned into wellness. You looked me right in the eye and said wellness. It's something that I need to work on. Is that what you're saying? But speaking of wellness and exercise, so marathon runner, mountain biker, wake surfer, everything in between, kiteboarder. What's next for you on the outdoor sports world?
Wow, that's all of those things are near and dear to my heart. But to your point, at one point I was an investor in Xterra Triathlon, which is the second largest triathlon series in the world, and so people find those connections and want to invest in it, if it makes sense. So that's an element of it. For me, the next thing on my list is I'm doing the Berlin Marathon this fall. So that's we're excited to do that, hoping that the travel is uneventful.
Right.
Was supposed to do it last year, but it didn't happen. So we're hoping that it works out this fall.
Is that through the city? Is it around the countryside? What's the
Yeah, it goes
track?
right through the city. And Berlin's such a city of the future these days, after everything that has been built there over the last 20 years. I'm looking forward to getting there. Probably stop at some other German cities this fall,
and partake in the local Schnitzelbank beer, perhaps.
Well,
perhaps.
You got to enjoy the local flair.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And make sure you feel part of the culture. That's right. Well, I really appreciate having you, and for those listening, terryberry.com, check it out. CEO and Chief Innovation and all things new and fun and interesting guy, Mike Byam.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks so much for having us, and we're so excited for the path that TiiCKER's on. It's terrific.
Appreciate it.